Okay. From 2013 to 2017, there was a 38% increase in school shootings. As human beings, we all have a need for safety for ourselves and for our families. After noticing the increase in school violence and shootings, I began educating myself more about this issue. I've thought of a few things that could potentially counteract some of these problems. Something must be done because no kid should have to be sent to school and their family worry about the safety of them. Not only does this affect the kids, but it affects families and the communities involved. The first thing we'll look at is how mass murder school shootings in the present compare to those in the past. In the past 18 years, there were more school shootings than in the entire 20th century. According to the FBI, mass murder is when 4 or more people are slain in one event in one location. The increase in the use and easy access of guns is one of the reasons for the increase in this number. There hasn't always been a huge need for high security measures in schools, but now that these violence numbers have gone up, there is a need for high security measures. One of the things that could be put into schools are metal detectors. 30% of public schools have metal detectors, mostly in predominantly black schools, but since school violence is in every school, then every school should have a metal detector. The next thing we'll look at is who's typically responsible for school violence. One thing that sort of all the people involved in extreme violence or school shootings have is mental illness. According to the Mayo Clinic, mental illness is a disorder that affects the behavior, thoughts, and moods of a person. Teachers need to pay more attention to the kids who may be struggling in the classroom or just in general. Kids should also be evaluated not only by the way they're acting in the classroom, but in their home life as well. If teachers can catch on to something that may not be right, they can do something to help prevent a kid's behavior from escalating and turning violent. Violence has turned into shootings for one reason, because easier gun access. 10% of students from the age 12 to 18 have access to a gun. If you mix a kid with a gun with mental illness, they can turn into a very dangerous situation. The last thing we'll talk about is the job of police officers in schools. Not only is it important to have a police officer in the school, but they need to have the resources, confidence, and training to be able to do their job if there's violence in the school. In the Parkland shooting, there was actually, the shooting in Parkland, Florida, there was actually footage of the school's police officer taking cover outside of the school as the school shooting was happening. According to Eden Herbin, who was a 15-year-old student in the school at the time of the shooting, 3 of the people in her classroom were killed, including her best friend who was sitting right next to her. Now, if this police officer would have actually done his job, who knows what the outcome could have been. 1/3 of schools have an armed guard, and it would take about $2.5 million of resources for the other 2/3 of schools to have armed guards. Another issue with the police officers is some of them only work part-time at schools, and violence isn't really planned. It can happen whenever, so it could happen when a police officer is not at the school, so it's highly ineffective to have a part-time police officer. Children shouldn't have to worry about bullying or violence at schools. It also affects all demographics. And if you're not concerned with this issue, imagine having your child or grandchild involved in bullying, school violence, or even being killed in a school shooting. If you know of any children being bullied, speak up or do something, because nobody deserves to be bullied while they're trying to better their lives and get an education. Let's get kids focused back on the books and on education and less on violence and crimes.